Good afternoon, everyone. I'm wondering how many of you are going to remember that we switched times until this afternoon. Um, it has allowed me to get a whole lot done. The most exciting thing, I finally got my new freezer delivered, and I am absolutely thrilled with that because everything is packed away in the freezer now. And it looks like we have a giant dog coming to join us. He hears my voice and he assumes treat now. So you guys have him well trained. Here, come over here and say hello. There. You say hi? Okay, off you go. So, yeah, we're here for chapter 14 of Gwyneth Ever After. I've had a full day already. Managed to finally get my fruit trees sprayed, so really pleased with that. It looks like the leaves are going to open soon. It is definitely spring, and I am super excited about that. But anyway, I'm going to just dive right in and hope that some of you catch up with me because I'm wondering if this time slot might not work for you guys as well as the morning one. Leave me a comment if you prefer the morning because I can try and rejig things for you as well. It's not like I've got a whole lot going on here, and I can just get up a half an hour earlier and take Giant Dog out for a walk beforehand. So do let me know if you would rather have this happening in the mornings. We will see if we can't accommodate you, okay? So anyway, chapter 14, Gwyneth Ever After. Gareth flicked open the newspaper and ignored the half-naked blonde parading through Sean's living room en route to the kitchen. It was her 5th trip in 20 minutes. In spite of the fact Sean slept soundly just down the hall, she'd made no secret of her interest in Gareth, or her availability if he returned the interest, which he did not. Christ, what was she, half his age? He snapped the newspaper again, staring at it without reading. He needed a coffee, but he didn't dare emerge from behind his flimsy protection. He also needed a shower and a shave, but he didn't trust Sean's friend not to pick the lock and join him. 5 more minutes, he told himself. 5 more minutes, and then a door opened down the hallway. Finally! Gareth peeked over the top edge of the paper. Sean saluted him lazily, tugging a t-shirt over his tousled head as he wandered into the living room. He dropped into a chair opposite and lifted his bare feet onto the coffee table. "Morning. You got in late." "I'm surprised you noticed." The blonde returned from the kitchen. Leaning over the back of Sean's chair, she wrapped her arms around him, exposing more than Gareth cared to see. He went back to staring at his paper. A muffled giggle reached him, then soft steps padded down the hallway. "She's gone," said Sean. Gareth dropped the paper onto his lap and rubbed both hands over his face. "Please tell me Bunny isn't a regular here," he muttered. "Her name is Carolyn, and you know I avoid regular. And when did you stop appreciating a beautiful woman? Maybe when she started looking the same age as my daughter?" He ignored Sean's glower. "I need a coffee." Sean snorted. "You look more like you need a stiff drink. Did you get any sleep last night?" "Not much." "Your non-involvement with the single mother getting to you?" Gareth glared at his cousin. "No, if you must know, I was thinking about Amy." "Oh?" "Something Gwyn said." Gareth broke off and sighed. "It messed up her oldest daughter pretty badly when her husband left." Sean linked his hands behind his head and regarded him in silence. "You're worried the same thing happened to Amy," he said at last, his voice quiet. Gareth turned his head to stare out the window at the grey morning. "Katie asked about her dad for 3 years after he left. Gwyn still doesn't think she understands." "How old is Katie?" 7. "And when her dad left?" 3. "It's hardly the same thing," Sean pointed out. "You weren't that much in the picture to begin with, and by the time Catherine remarried, Amy probably didn't even notice you were gone." Gareth forced a breath past the knife embedded in his chest. "Thanks a lot. You know what I mean. Besides, you weren't the one who left, remember? Catherine did that." "But I let her go, Sean. I gave up any right I had to her. How the hell do I explain that?" Sean rose to his feet, stretched, and headed for the kitchen. "Be honest," he suggested over his shoulder. "She's 18 now, remember? I imagine she understands life a little better than your girlfriend's 7-year-old daughter does." Pausing in the doorway, he gave Gareth a sly grin. "And speaking of being honest, was it really only Amy who kept you awake all night?" Gareth thought of the pain he'd seen in Gwyn's eyes the night before. Pain he'd caused with his questions but hadn't been able to ease because he'd been too wrapped up in his own guilt. The knife in his chest twisted and slid in a little deeper. "No," he said, "it wasn't just Amy." Gwyn was having a bad day. It started at midnight when Maggie crawled into bed with her, followed by a feverish Nicholas an hour later. At 3 a.m., Gwyn ran a bath for Maggie, and after one look at Nicholas, added him to the same tub. A second bath for both followed at 4:45, and a third at 6:30. Things had gone downhill from there. Nicholas and Maggie squabbled endlessly. Having run out of calamine lotion, Gwyn had resorted to baking soda paste, not nearly as effective, until Sandy could take her lunch break and run by the drugstore for more of the precious pink liquid. By noon, she'd dealt with no fewer than 3 telemarketers, the last of whom would no doubt reconsider being quite so perky in future, and a client who wanted major structural changes made to his already completed plans. Just as she finished arguing about everything from when she could do the work to whether or not she would bill him extra, frantic cries for "Mommy!" made her drop the phone on the desk and bolt from her office. The sound of running water penetrated as she tripped halfway up the stairs, scraping the entire length of one shinbone. She ran faster. Limping and cursing, she hobbled into the bathroom to find the tub near to overflowing and Nicholas gamely trying to turn off the tap. Gwyn dived over him and shut off the water. Closing her eyes and clinging to the tap, she took a moment to breathe. And to remember she was a mother. Her children were merely sick, and they didn't deserve to be locked up until they were 30. She turned to her pathetically spotted, crestfallen little boy, trying to muster what calm she could. "What were you doing, Nicky?" "Helping," he said in a small voice. His bottom lip quivered. "Maggie was itchy and you were on the phone, so I was making her a bath." "I see. I put porridge in it like you." He held out the large oatmeal tin he'd concealed behind his back. Gwyn took the container, hefted it in her hand, and then gave it a shake. She eyed the murky bathtub water. "All of it?" she asked. She wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer, even though the empty tin spoke for itself. "Did you wrap it in a cloth?" Nicholas shook his head. A tear fell from his lashes onto his rash-roughened cheek. Maggie produced the rubber plug from the bathtub from behind her back. She held it out to Gwyn. "The water was icky," she said, "so I pulled the plug." Gwyn stared at the plug in her hand, then at the near to overflowing, sludge-filled tub. She closed her eyes. Her shin throbbed. The doorbell rang. Sandy, thank God! With Nicholas and Maggie trailing after her, Gwyn limped downstairs. She halted the twins at the foot of the stairs, reminding them that Auntie Sandy didn't need to catch their chicken pops, and then opened the door. Gareth stood on the porch, one hand braced against the doorframe, hair neatly pulled back once more, eyes hidden behind sunglasses as black as his leather jacket. Gwyn's mouth turned into the Sahara. "Hi," he said. Her mouth flapped in response. Mortification settled over her like an itchy sweater, and her fingers tightened around the door, resisting the impulse to slam it shut. She wasn't ready to face him. Not after the scene in her living room last night, a scene that had played over and over again in her mind ever since. Her poor wronged woman performance of a lifetime, and the way she'd come within seconds of bawling all over a Hollywood megastar, followed by that star's abrupt departure. Heat flooded her face. The more she thought about it, the more painful it became. "I dropped by to see how things were going." He looked down at the two faces peering past her legs, and the corners of his mouth curved up. "You appear to be fighting a losing battle." She swallowed several times before risking her voice. "I'm trying to look on the bright side," she said, forcing a lightness she didn't feel. "At this rate, we'll be back to normal in a week." "True." Gareth stared at the porch floor. Gwyn, about last night. I'm sorry I left like that. So abruptly, I mean. Gwyn blinked at him. Wait a minute. She'd all but come apart at the seams, and he was apologizing to her? Gareth peered over the top of his sunglasses, his heavy brows drawn together. She knew he was waiting for her to reply, but shock had robbed her of speech. He sighed, lifting his chin and becoming invisible behind the dark lenses again. I know I should explain. You don't owe me any explanations, she interrupted. She'd intended to articulate her own apology, but the stiffness she heard in her own voice made her cringe anew. She looked away from the gaze she could feel, but not see. Why couldn't he have called instead of coming over? At this level of embarrassment, I'm sorry would be a great deal easier over the phone rather than face to face. Gareth straightened and shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. Hell, this wasn't going at all well, and he couldn't blame her a bit. First he'd run out on her, and now he was botching his apology. If only he could just tell her. Gwyn, there are things about me, things you should know, but... He paused as a car horn tooted behind him. He glanced over his shoulder at a red sports car that had pulled up by the curb in front of the house. Are you expecting someone? I ran out of calamine lotion this morning. Sandy said she'd bring some by on her lunch hour. That's her. Nicholas edged past his mother's leg, but Gwyn caught him back. Oh, no, you don't. Auntie Sandy hasn't had chicken pox. She doesn't need to catch them from you, my spotted little monster. She glanced at Gareth. Can you watch the kids for a second while I run out to her car? You have no shoes. I'll go. No, it's fine, thanks. I'll just slip these on. Gwyn snatched up a pair of muddy clogs and slipped them onto her feet. I'd like to meet her. No, you wouldn't. Gareth laughed, not sure what else to do. Gwyn, I'll be back in a minute. Gwyn rushed out the door, past him, down the steps and across the lawn to the waiting car. Gareth frowned after her. What was all that about? A desire to protect his privacy? Given that she'd already introduced him to her babysitter, he doubted it. And besides, she'd looked embarrassed, ashamed almost. He struggled with a foreign sense of offense. He'd never had anyone want to keep him a secret before. He realized Nicholas had ventured out onto the cold wooden floor to stand beside him, accompanied by Maggie. Both children waved madly at the red car's occupant, and Nicholas was inching his way toward the stairs. Nice try, buddy, but I don't think so, Gareth said. He placed a hand atop each blonde head and turned them in an about face. If you come down with pneumonia on top of everything else, your mother will have my head. Back inside. What's new? New? Nicholas grappled with the unfamiliar word, but trudged obediently back into the house. Pneumonia, Gareth repeated, casting a last glance at Gwyn, who leaned through the open passenger door of the sports car. He closed the front door and turned to answer Nicholas's question. So there you have it, Chapter 14. I think we're like a third of the way through the book already. This is taking no time at all. And I love hanging out with you guys once a day. This is really nice. You're the highlight of my day. Here and then over on the Facebook page for... I can think of it. I have words, Lydia Hawk Books Facebook page where I'm doing my reading for the Sins of the Angels. Just again, if you care to join me there, you are more than welcome. I'd love to see you. Be forewarned that it is very much different from the romance. It's dark urban fantasy, and it has the language and the some gruesomeness to go along with that. And you get to know my darker side. So anyways, Leslie, thank you. I'm loving reading to you, and it is my pleasure to do this. Like I said, you guys are the highlight of my day. So thank you for joining me, and I will be back here 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, if that's working for everyone. Like I said, leave me a comment if you would rather that this was happening in the morning still, and I will figure something out that accommodates that schedule. I can get up a half an hour early. What is that anyways, right? So take care. Have a good afternoon. Stay safe. Wash your hands, all that stuff. And I will see you here tomorrow, okay? Bye.